Welcome to Premium Graduates, your podcast on history and humanities. This is Ricardo Silvestre speaking. A while ago, I promised you, I don't know if you remember, among other things, because I promise a lot of things, a program about Aleksander Dugin. And the truth is that life has not given me what I need because I cannot make a program about someone I do not know. I have not had time to see his books, to study him thoroughly. But here we have a guest who will enlighten us, because he is someone who has been reading him for a while, who has told me. And well, at least he will do the work, since I cannot fulfill my promise. Someone will fulfill it for me, as I am unable to do so at this time. I'm bringing someone to do it on the show.
And here we go. Let's go greet him.
What's up? How are you doing, Jordi?
Hey there. Good evening, Ricardo. Very good. Glad to be back here with you.
Yes, within a time frame of 1 week, I did it twice. Furthermore, it was already... Additionally, you are required to...
In case anyone didn't watch that old show and doesn't know who Aleksander Dugin is, etc., well, perhaps fame has come to you as the most ignorant person because a few months ago, it happened to his daughter, Dania Dugina, as you are aware that in Slavic countries, surnames have both masculine and feminine genders, which is a unique characteristic of their naming conventions. Dania Dugina passed away in an assault, which appears to have been targeted primarily at her parents, or at least according to some sources. And from that point, he made a leap to fame and then caught the attention of the news media and journalists who began discussing him as Putin's Putin, Putin's ideologue, and so on and so forth. And perhaps someone else has been deceived by it. Nevertheless, the program I pledged was long before this unfortunate incident. So, what's up with Dugin? And with this presentation I'm done, I'll let you speak now because you're the one who knows. Well, there's a science that has become very trendy lately, which is geopolitics. Related, for that reason, a word says politics with geography. So you see that the ins and outs of what is the global positioning to be able to dominate the world and all these things. And in the West, it is dominated by a very specific narrative of Anglo-Saxon origin. Provide information about the world island, which is composed of Asia, Africa, and Europe, as well as Middle Earth, or something along those lines, correct? Middle Earth, the center of the world, that the center of the world is around there. In that area, that would be the Russian steppes, Kazakhstan, and so on. From there, the great game, if you have read the renowned novel Kim from India, authored by Richard Kipling. There, Great Britain and Russia are engaged in the great game of dominating that area. And thus, the epic showdown between the mighty land power and the mighty naval power, the ultimate clash of titans, was about to unfold in all its glory. Well, in short, that's the perspective of one side. Well, this is a completely alternative view.
And here I give you the floor, Jordi, and nothing at all. How is it going with you?
Ricardo, if you don't mind, let me pick up on what you just said, which is the theory of Herland. Because in the end, in order to understand Dublin and to understand Russia, we need to know exactly what the hell this Herland's island world theory is all about, which is also called the theory of the cardinal region or the continental heart theory. It was developed by the English geographer and politician Halford Mackinder in the late 19th century, and it posits that the control of a specific area of the world would enable complete domination of that area. This cardinal area is represented by Central Asia and Eastern Europe, and it's surrounded by a middle strip where the terrestrial and maritime domains meet. And it is surrounded by an in-between strip where the land and ocean areas are located. The theory he developed states that in that particular area, land power would have a superior advantage over maritime dominance because of its inexhaustibility by sea, which cannot be depleted over time. We cannot comprehend the meaning of Dugin without having knowledge of the fact that the geopolitical theory developed by the Anglo-Saxon world elucidates that the precise domination of Russia, which is presently known as Russia, has the potential to establish global dominance. You mentioned a fascinating word, and that is that there are definitely also transcendent and historical connections, biblical, regarding what would constitute a thalassocracy, which refers to the power of a state that is based on both land and sea, as opposed to a Telurocracy. The people from the sea in opposition to the people from the earth.
The sea peoples would be represented by liberalism, permanent change, which is what we observe today in the Anglo-Saxon world, and the Telurocracies are the conservative powers, the conservative empires, which is what Russia is, a Poland, or what it could have been, what it had been over 100 years ago, the Austrian Empire of the Austrians. Well, that is the reason why I am finished with this task.
With the aim of directing attention to the topic, however, I had a strong desire to clearly convey that Dugin is the apostle of Telurocracy, which stands in opposition to parasocracy. Have you also referred to him as the Rasputin of the Kremlin?
No, some people call him, plus he's got a beard and stuff, but I get the feeling that he's not as Rasputin-like or has as much direct influence.
You're right, he's not Rasputin or influential.
The beard thing is intriguing. I am collecting tiny little fragments.
Why does he always have that beard and never trims it? Because he is an elderly Orthodox believer. The old Orthodox believers separated from the Orthodox Church in the regions of Mekon in the 17th century and consider it a sin to make kasiliada. That is the reason why he has got it going on. It is a distinctive symbol that represents who he is as a person, what it belongs to, and what it thinks. Dugin was born in 1982 into a somewhat influential family in the Soviet nomenclature. Her dad was an intelligence colonel in the military, responsible for gathering and analyzing information. Her mom, on the other hand, is a doctor specializing in the field of medicine. He is a jack of all trades. His father departed the family when he was just 3 years old, but he ensured they had a good standard of living and assisted him and his mother in getting out of trouble with the authorities on numerous occasions. Even the father in the year 1983 went through a mini purge. When he was expelled or terminated, he was removed from the Secret Service and transferred to customs due to the decline in his life circumstances. Dugin is an individual, as previously mentioned, who is highly versatile. He has developed the fourth political theory, which he has been promoting to the world for a span of 20 years. According to Dugin, liberalism, fascism, and communism have all proven to be ineffective in providing a comprehensive vision and comprehensive service to human society. As a result, he has formulated a fourth political theory, in line with the previous three, from which he extracts and removes what he considers to be the most aberrant or harmful elements, such as racism from fascism, while retaining what interests him. This theory is his alternative approach to addressing the shortcomings of the existing ideologies.
You previously stated that Aleksander Dugin gained global recognition when news of an incident, which occurred on August 22, 22, nearly 2 years ago, spread worldwide. This incident involved a bomb being placed in his Toyota, resulting in the tragic death of his daughter. It has been 2 years since this event took place.
2 years.
I've said a few months. My sense of history is null. Well, sorry. Life goes by fast, and that's a sign that things aren't going very well.
The sense of history is null. Life goes quickly, and that's positive.
It'd be like meeting the guy who made headlines worldwide. Today, I think he's a pretty famous person, just in case. He was called the Kremlin ideologue and many other things that, as you have also mentioned, he is not.
By the way, I mean, he was well known because I heard one of his lectures in Spanish in Argentina, I think. This guy's a real polyglot. It's incredible how many languages he speaks.
He is a very curious individual because he is self-taught when it comes to languages. To the best of my knowledge, he is able to speak Portuguese, French, English, obviously Russian, and Spanish. I am uncertain if he is able to communicate in Hindi. He learned it himself because he was interested. In fact, he would take jobs like being a librarian or a book salesman or a parking attendant or whatever it took to be able to dedicate himself to studying during those moments of work. An individual who has been captivated by the realm of intellect ever since a young age. He rejected his cultural heritage, hailing from a Marxist family, and he rejected it, remaining steadfast in his atheism. However, he found solace and acceptance in the embrace of a traditional Orthodox family who provided him with emotional support and an education in their beliefs. He absorbed the love and warmth of this unfamiliar Russia, a Russia rooted in faith that he had never known. As time passed, he gradually transformed into a devoted practitioner of the Orthodox religion, fully embracing its teachings and rituals and finding fulfillment in his newfound spiritual path. Even though she had been baptized at the age of 6, as her family said, she was an atheist. And he has always been dedicated to studying. Is it true that he has been, I don't know if the word would be the go-to philosopher, but he is definitely the ideologue of this new Russia?
In my opinion, I would like to emphasize that it is not just Putin who is affected, but rather it has a significant impact on certain key positions within the armed forces, which should not be overlooked. They give it a lot of consideration when it comes to high-ranking military officials.
You have the option to provide a comment on this matter in a prompt manner if you so desire. Look, Dugin has a particularity, and that is that he is part of a group as an intellectual. He is part of a group that is present in what are the secret services, the FSB, and I believe also in foreign intelligence and the military, which are, I don't know if the word would be anticipating the tragedies of Stalinism, from the point of view that they do not believe in democracy in the Western system because they have tried it, mind you. It is not a criticism that is not constructive. Russia tested democracy with Yeltsin for 10 years and went from having 3 million people on the poverty line to having 150. Russia was looted, violated, and massacred during the period that went from a Soviet government where there were no luxuries. There wasn't what we have, where you go to a supermarket and there's a sale of 25 products, but there was no hunger or misery, nor was there freedom. Then they experienced the shocking impact of the neoliberal policies that were enforced with Yeltsin, and it is evident that those policies resulted in the complete destruction of the country. And there's a group of ideologues and military personnel who, I don't know if the word would be nostalgic, who realized that the implementation of neoliberal policies in a country like Russia, which had never implemented them and had never had a democracy beyond the Duma after the application of the Tsar 100 years ago, didn't sit well with them. So they have been organizing under the shelter and protection provided by the leadership of Vladimir Putin. But he's not from their crew. In Russia, as far as I know, there are 3 groups. There are the liberals, there are the Oryalkas, and there are the patriots. Dugin is part of the group of patriots with all their mistakes, and because he can even have pejorative connotations for a European, but he is part of the patriots. So we come across a Dugin who goes through various political parties. He flirted with ideas from German fascism as well, in addition to his previous flirtations with other ideologies. He's a controversial person for that. He served as an advisor to the Russian Communist Party during the 1990s under the leadership of Gennady, and he continues to hold the position of first secretary to this day, making him the longest-serving member in that role. Then he went through the Natal Bolshevik Party, a mix of communism and democratismo. And later he founded his own party, which is the fourth political theory party, which is the Eurasian Party.
Eurasianism, it's another concept that...
Well, you see,
Eurasianism is intriguing because I think it hasn't been studied enough, or from the Western perspective, this idea fails to gain traction. I might, but possibly in the incorrect way. It could be that I've made a mistake, but I think I have it very clear and well defined in my mind.
Eurasianism is nothing more than the theory of the world island, the guerrilla, the union of Russia and China, of Asia and Eurasia, in order to fight for their own survival as a civilization. They ain't Europeans.
They have their own ancient tradition. It's only right that they do. Therefore, there has been a lot of talk on television. They say, have they ever commented? No, because Dugin in the Eurasianismo of Lisbon talks about Vostok.
This would be the third Rome. That's what Dugin is.
However, Dugin is not part of the horde. Dugin is associated with the third horde of Genghis Khan. The first horde belongs to the Mongol Empire. What is the horde of the world island? The union of China, Mongolia, and Russia, which conquered and was halted at the gates of Vienna. The second horde of Genghis Khan is that of Stalin and Mao Zedong. The union didn't last long. It didn't even reach 10 years. Between the Chinese Communist Party and Stalinism, the Soviet Communist Party, which fell apart after Stalin's death. The third horde of Genghis Khan is from Dublin, the fourth political theocracy, and Eurocentrism. I believe that hasn't been fully understood. They have an imperial project that is completely opposed to the Anglo-Saxon liberal project. They hold the belief, Aleksander Dugin holds the belief, that liberalism is one of the beasts of the apocalypse, according to their belief system. It's the dragon of the apocalypse. He peels it under his feet, put an end to tradition, put an end to the concept of family, the idea of a father and the idea of a mother, put an end to the towns, the ethnicities, and their history. In that case, the diagnosis you make may be exceptional. And so, in what it doesn't want, it has endowed Russia with Eurasianism, with the fourth political theory, to prevent Russia from falling into a liberalism that erases its own historical tradition. That's why Aleksander Dugin also flirted with occultism, neo-paganism, everything that is an epidemio-modial tradition of Julius Ebola, everything that underlies the eternal soul of Russia is what Aleksander Dugin propagates in order to convey the rich cultural heritage and spiritual essence of his country. Recently, I've noticed that O'Hare's speech is getting more and more filled with scatology, something I've been following for years now. I mean, it's already a speech that goes beyond political ideas, and it's a civilizational discourse. Well, I may be dragging on for too long.
No, but I want to say something interesting. Perhaps I've never truly explored the other perspective, the alternative view, the one from Glossajon, etc., etc. I can't recall the name of the person who created it. Did you say the name? The one who developed?
Oh no, Herland theory.
The Herland. Yeah, it was Halford John Mackinder.
Yeah, but okay, I totally forgot the name, But I did dedicate a program because it has been said that he flirted with esotericism and such. There was a minor hiccup in the communication here, but we will pick it up at a later time. I was expressing that can give us the impression that Dugin's theory, based on what you have mentioned, has something esoteric about it, while the alternative theory, the traditional one here in the Western world by Herland and similar thinkers, is founded on rational concepts and scientific studies conducted by experts in the field. However, upon closer examination, we can observe that the origin of this notion can be traced back to the renowned John Dee, who theorized or fantasized about the British Empire and thalassocracy based on esoteric ideas and concepts. I mean, it is like a more refined form or expression of esotericism, but at the root of that vision, there is also an esoteric view or understanding of the world. Just a heads up, prior to the occurrence of this outage, we had to restart once again. Well, I am unsure of your thoughts on this matter.
That is precisely as you state. In point of fact, it is actually even more complementary. In other words, it is exactly as you just mentioned. Jean Riet, the great magician, the 007, signed his letters as 007. He is the creator of the terms British Empire. He is the one who says that we must colonize the green lands of North America. And he is the one who does not formulate it in a structured way, but does leave the steps to dominate the world, to create an empire. You have made reference to the concept of transcendence, occultism, his belief in Enochian magic, and his involvement in a proto-Masonry organization. In fact, Eurasianism and the British Empire originate from the same root because they both share the belief in the same concept. It is just that they arrive at different conclusions. Indeed, Dugin and the Russian politicians, Russian geopoliticians, the Russian army, and the Russian nomenclature are unequivocal in their assertion that Herland's theory is undeniably true. And so, what they do not want is for this theory to be utilized in a way that goes against their own interests. While the Anglo-Saxons, who draw from the tradition of John Dee, just want to use this theory to go against us. Actually, there's a really interesting thing. When you study history, and you know it too, Ricardo, I think it must have happened to you too when they tell you about continental balance. The British Empire only participates in conflicts on European land when the balance of power on the continent has been jeopardized, indicating that there is a nation with sufficient strength to exert dominance over the other European nations.
I'm sick and tired of repeating that in my programs.
The cotton test, only those monarchies that have exceeded world power have managed to survive. By global power, we must comprehend the British Empire, the comfortable one.
The German and Austrian monarchies, both Catholic and Protestant, have vanished from the face of the earth. Why, you ask?
Because they were disrupting the continental balance. They couldn't afford a Germany that surpassed them scientifically, demographically, and technically. They couldn't afford the same with the Austrian Empire, and they couldn't afford the same with France. To put it differently, the path to Moscow goes through Paris, Berlin, and Vienna, so to speak. And Moscow is the ultimate achievement of this policy, in a manner of speaking. Well, I am unsure if this has provided you with an answer.
Yeah. Well, no, it has clarified something for me, because you see, in the presentation, I said that it was the opposite of an alternative thing, and it's not so alternative now that I think about it after what you said, that indeed this vision is not so alternative to the other one, but it's the same thing seen from the other side of the trench, so to speak, right?
Certainly, there is not a stick in existence that does not have two ends. Well, so let's see. In order to continue progressing, because since I do not study it extensively, I go...
You already know that I play by ear. People say, it happens. Anyway, I haven't been able to delve much into it.
See? And there's also another characteristic that I've heard many times that Dugin says, which to me is the one that stands out the most. Then you clarify my doubts or clarify my prejudices, and that's the issue of multilateralism.
To me, it seems like that whole multilateralism thing is just an excuse to say we're going against our opponents, but deep down he doesn't really believe it, because I imagine what he really wants is hegemony. I don't know, it just came to me.
Yes, the thing is that he knows he won't have hegemony, for instance, in Africa, because Herland's theory states so. He can influence, but he'll never be able to occupy it, nor what would be South America. There is something interesting. I mean, it could be that what he is actually looking for, like you say, is to gather an alternative majority of diverse peoples and civilizations to fight against a common enemy. Once this common enemy disappears, nobody knows if Russia or China will prevail. So that is a reality we have on the table. Another aspect is that I have been reading and observing him for a considerable number of years, and I genuinely perceive that he truly appreciates and values what it is the cultural tradition of transcendence, along with the unique visions of the future that each town possesses, are integral aspects that contribute to the rich heritage of these communities and shape their collective identity. I mean, he has published a number of incredibly interesting articles about, for example, the eschatological tradition of France and Spain. And it's not just France and Spain, it's Africa, Asia, South America too. In other words, he, in contrast to what would be liberalism, thalassocracy, which aims to make a clean slate, to homogenize all men, he does not. I observe that Eurasianism is respectful of what would be the own centuries-old tradition of the peoples and aims to complement it in order to preserve cultural heritage. In other words, what he is looking for is the primordial tradition, and he believes that all these people are fighting against the sea beast, the apocalypse, which he thinks is liberalism. There are certain things I must say that make sense. For example, one can consider concepts like posthumanism, transhumanism, and posthumanism itself. This is something that the Anglo-Saxon countries and the liberal tradition itself experience. The liberal tradition has been stripping man of everything that is his spiritual heritage. That's a certainty. And we have reached the point, as I mentioned in the last show we were together, that before we were individuals, we couldn't separate our soul from our body, from our gender, from our identity, and now we are divided. We can divide our gender, we can divide our soul because it no longer exists, and our consciousness, surely a hive of computers. From this point of view, for me, when we explain it today, well, yes, you're right. They struggle with what they believe is posthumanism, which they identify with the forces of evil and actually talk about Lucifer and the devil. According to what they say, the forces of evil are unable to create life or even come close to imitating it in any meaningful way. The sole action you can take is to annihilate it, and in order to annihilate it, you must undermine the fundamental pillars of what constitutes humanity itself: familial bonds, religious belief, and cultural heritage. Certainly, viewed in that manner, it is logical to conclude that the Slavic soul, which has persevered throughout the centuries and managed to survive, originates from Russia, a country that has remained unaffected by liberalism or Anglo-Saxon culture, and whose soul has endured in communism. Clearly, it's logical his goal is to protect her. The issue is how he'll accomplish it.
Hey, but now while you were saying this, it came to my mind that the soul is similar to lava and other things. Once I made a program that, well, it turned out kind of meh. It didn't turn out great. It didn't turn out completely well. But I titled it, Trying to Understand the Russian Soul. And among other things, I believe I discussed a bit about those Slavic mystical tendencies which are characteristic of Russia, referring to Rasputin and the people associated with him, and also about something very characteristic of the Russians, which is nihilism, especially in the 19th century. And I referenced a paragraph, I believe, even from the Catechism of the Revolutionary, which is a truly terrible and appalling book. The act of destroying everything is the Russian counterpart to the chaos order observed in Western secret societies, such as Freemasonry and other similar organizations. There is also something very similar present there. I mean, it possesses its own nihilism as well, its own spiritual self-destruction, you know.
Go especially to it's not typical of them, it's imported.
Careful, you see, the power of the Tsars, the Russian Orthodox Catholic civilization, couldn't be destroyed from the outside. It was impossible. Current Russia is 42 times geographically larger than Spain. The Russian Empire was almost 80. We are discussing approximately 25% of the Earth's crust. It is a nation with a developed society and a country located within a continent. He was unbeatable from the outside. Therefore, to utterly annihilate what would constitute a civilization, an absolute relativism of unparalleled magnitude and intensity was indispensably necessary. And this is where nihilism comes in. With what is fatalism? Yes, it is true that the Russian soul is fatalistic. Why it must be because of crime, I don't know. And from this fatalism, various anarchists who curiously passed through London came back with the famous nihilism after being invaded by what anarchism is, which is destruction.
Certainly, at this very moment, I was contemplating a book authored by the renowned Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky, which goes by the name of The Possessed.
Do you know him? Either the devils or the demons? He's got a bunch of texts.
The demons?
Which is also called The Possessed, according to the translation.
However, in truth, the most wicked protagonists are individuals who, upon further consideration, have actually accepted, as I have previously mentioned, now that I reflect on it.
That is cool.
Own of the own nihilism. And you've contradicted me, because I think the main characters who are there destructive are people who've adopted liberal ideas. And they've taken them to their outcomes, right? He's the dad reprimanding his kid, saying, "What are you doing?"
The father is a convinced liberal, and his son is a despicable being who does all kinds of atrocities. He says, "I'm being consistent with what you have taught me," he tells him.
I mean, so a liberal father produces a socialist, anarchist, and destructive son.
Well, I don't know. I've merged the two things.
Book, I take the opportunity to say that if a person is well educated and wants to know these things and get into the nitty-gritty, it's a book that requires several readings to fully understand it. Demons, possessed, devils, I don't know how they exist.
It's just that it has several translations. Fyodor Dostoevsky.
It's not an easy book to read, but as you start putting together data like the ones you just gave me now, it becomes clearer. I am unsure. I simply place it there because Dostoevsky is a highly renowned author whose writing has had a profound impact on me.
Well, he mentioned the Superman avant la lettre before Nietzsche in his famous Crime and Punishment, and the serious consequences that can arise from all of that.
Well, excuse this interruption.
No. It's just that what you said about nihilism is interesting, apart from something else.
Assault the primary basis of the Russian spirit, which encompasses not just tradition, but also redemption, and is consistently present throughout the entirety of the work. Redemption from a non-human yet spiritual standpoint. Nihilism is not redemption, it is the annihilation of all meaning and purpose. So they had the need to destroy an empire based on consciousness. Another thing is that slavery existed, plain and simple. The Grega service existed, and what they preached was not what they practiced. But without a doubt, what is at a conceptual level, what Russia represents conceptually, what it represented in the past, was a possibility to revive a spiritual and conscious kingdom. And that had to be fought in every conceivable way. Fundamentally, I believe that they also came to the realization that in the end, Russia would undergo a transformation. Those who originated the theory of Hitler, the Anglo-Saxon geopoliticians, came to the realization that Russia would undergo a transformation and that it would eradicate or eliminate all kinds of injustices to ultimately emerge as a powerful and prosperous nation. As an addition to what I've already told you, but this is already enough.
That would perhaps be speculating too much.
Well, it's interesting, these things. I told you I wasn't really prepared for this, and as you say things, I'm connecting the dots, and I've had to take back my words twice already.
Well, that's not going well.
So, and how could we proceed with this conversation?
Can you please provide additional information about Aleksander Dugin's theories, for example?
How am I gonna?
Excuse me? No, nothing.
I'm all ears.
To clarify, as an illustration, how do you envision Western Europe excluding Great Britain, for instance, in terms of your perspective? I can already picture his idea of her. For instance, Germany, Italy, Spain, France. What's your take on all these countries?
Well, he believes he is the best within Europe. Yes, he firmly holds the belief that within Europe there is still a genuine possibility for redemption. That is, that there exists sufficiently robust atavistic inner forces to rescue and preserve the rich tradition of each of the peoples, enabling them to break free from the oppressive Anglo-Saxon yoke and forge their own path in accordance with their unique historical traditions, distinct from the influence of what would typically be perceived as liberalism. It is something I have witnessed repeatedly in his writings. What he does is a call to the patriots of Europe, to the fathers and mothers, to the people he appeals to, who are the nationalist patriots, to wake up and free themselves from the yoke of the Anglo-Saxon Empire that has exerted control over them for far too long. Certainly touches sensitive fibers like, for example, things we don't think about in our everyday lives. But he emphasizes something that is true. For example, is Germany an independent country? Not these. And you'll say, and why? Well, how many American bases does it have? The most famous one is Armstrong's. I mean, it has been under military occupation since the year 1945. What kind of freedom can a country possess when it is under the control of a foreign power? And I'm not referring to NATO bases, I'm referring to American bases. What kind of freedom can Italy have in Aviano or any other American base?
The one I know the most is Aviano. It is the one that everyone knows the most, I think.
La Spezia, sorry, that's where the naval commands are located. What kind of freedom can a country have when it's occupied by US troops? Italy. No, a freedom is a protectorate. It's a virtual nation, but not a real one.
We have actually witnessed this with Germany, which was constructing bridges with Russia for energy and stuff. They have completely destroyed a Mangasaduct. The destruction is widely known and the responsible party is known to everyone. And they have folded, and now there is a German leader saying that he wants to defeat Russia. It goes completely against their interests. The big loser in Europe in this war is Germany, and yet it is completely folded to the will of the empire. It's a really curious thing.
Well, it is quite curious if we think about the fact that we have been militarily occupied for many years, for multiple reasons, because the politician who is against NATO and Africa would not be permitted to assume power. And there are precedents. In the 50s, there was a party formed by ex-military who had been Nazis, although not with war crimes. And the only thing that set them apart from the rest was that they didn't question liberalism, they didn't question capitalism, they didn't question anything. The only thing they were saying is that Germany needs to get rid of military occupation and have its own foreign policy. It is highly probable that the party was shut down, and as a result, its leaders were forced to go into exile. I'm not defending them, they were Nazis and I have nothing to do with them. But another thing is that I don't see the reality. You stated Germany is acting against its own interests. Clearly. There's another theory that complements Gerland's, the theory of energy and fever. That was also developed by the Saxons. They are very aware that a union, temporary or not, or for interests, of the vast energy and vital resources of Syria, together with German technology, efficiency, and industry, are unbeatable. Because one will nourish the other. And he couldn't be defeated by any empire on earth. So they're always opting, the neoliberals, to cut any kind of cooperation link between Germany and Russia. I would like to recall the case of Stalin, the actor in the Molotov-Ribbentrop Agreement. During the aggression when Nazis and communists, Hilbert and Stalin, made a peace agreement between themselves, resulting in the occupation and division of Poland. I was having a blast. Well, you see, since both of them were psycho killers, Obviously, things couldn't stay calm and they ended up killing each other and attacking each other. Hitler attacked the Soviet Union, but there are precedents for that. You mentioned the Nord Stream thing. It's just that obviously America can't afford a competitor and Europe is a competitor.
They have the oil from Alaska, and they have the fracking gas that they later liquefy for us. What does Europe have?
Europe doesn't have access to any type of energy.
Do not inform me about windmills. Do not inform me, because there is no country on earth that can survive with small windmills.
None.
But there are people who believe that, yes, and more than you think.
Well, it's really easy. It's a piece of cake. There's this thing called energy flux density. It's pure science. It's not ideology. The Romans, using firewood as their primary fuel source, had a classical civilization that was built upon either a type 1 or type 2 civilization. They couldn't go any further technologically. The revolution comes, Middle Ages with firewood. No development, no population growth, no improvement in quality of life, no experiments. We've reached the Industrial Revolution.
What is your preferred tool, and why do you opt to use it?
Due to its higher energy flux density per kilogram or per cubic centimeter compared to wood, coal enables a significant advancement, or more precisely an exponential advancement, rather than a quantum one, in quality of life, life expectancy, population density, and discoveries. The upcoming techno-paradigm is centered around oil. Oil possesses a significantly greater energy flow density compared to coal, enabling us to achieve greater advancements. This includes improved heating, electricity-powered microwaves in our kitchens, and hospitals equipped with ICUs and CCUs that rely on electricity for life support systems. The availability of cheap electricity further enhances these capabilities. We can heat our kitchen, we can have access to synthetic fertilizers, thanks to oil that has exponentially increased field yields. We move on to another techno paradigm, the fifth one, which would be the utilization of nuclear power generation. Of course, nuclear energy, a kilo of uranium, now I'm making it up, but I've read about it and looked into it, and it corresponds to tons and tons and tons of oil, like a nuclear power plant. I no longer discuss fission. There is fusion, which is currently being developed. It is a technology similar to that of stars, and it is inexpensive and easily accessible to all people. The fusion one, which is theoretically considered dangerous, although nowadays the power plants that harness fusion energy are generally considered to be safer. Well, the techno paradigm that is linked to a much higher energy flux density makes electricity much cheaper, and to see much more, because there is much more due to the energy flux density, it is possible to produce consumer goods much cheaper that reach everyone. It is more cost effective to be able to keep yourself warm during the winter. Naturally, if you comprehend this reasoning that is connected to what the mathematician Leibniz's circles uncovered, which is a larger population, more intellects to ponder, greater capability, and demonstrated that there is an increased capacity to address society's issues, as opposed to a society that has undergone deindustrialization with windmills and feudalized systems that will tolerate all living beings. To mess up the industry and Europe's development, they had to mess it up with energy.
What happened with Germany? They have denuclearized.
They have discontinued the operation of nuclear power plants. And what is the impact of this on the progress of 2 or 3 techno paradigms in the country, causing a significant setback and delay in technological advancements and innovation? That is the reason to explain why there is such an obsession with ending the energy alliance between Germany and Russia, which has been a topic of great concern. I want to remind you that the significant leap Western civilization made in the 60s was thanks to nuclear energy. The United States has, if I remember correctly, 95 reactors. Even today, and China is developing them, but at an absolute speed, in 4 or 5 years, they will have more than the Americans, and they have successfully tested nuclear fusion energy, maybe not to be able to develop it on an industrial level, but they are thus achieving that. The energy limited to the stars is ending poverty. Apologies for digressing, but the intention of America is to remove a competitor from Europe, sacrificing our empowerment in order to achieve their goal. There is no space for such a large number of competitors in the world.
Look, I had planned to do a program together with another collaborator named Fernando Canas, who those who follow me know, whose title was precisely "We Are a Colony."
Are we correct?
I mean, you have given me, I can assure you that I will remember what you said on the show if we do it, which we might do this week as well, possibly. This thing you've said about energy. He might even cut this out and put it there because he has a theory very similar to yours, identical, or I think it's the same expressed in other words, you know? Well, after this digression, do you have anything else to add about Aleksander Dugin, or should we leave it for now and continue another day?
A whole lot of things. If you want to get closer to another program, yes.
Let's do another program, yeah, or this will drag on.
Well, yeah.
It's just that, you see, there's this, I explain to people that these guys are crazy. It's just that I noticed there's a bit of a delay in communication. So when I finish talking, it still hasn't reached you. And then it's like when they're on TV with the correspondent who is in front of Fulanito. And Fulanito, the correspondent, takes a while to respond because the same thing happens here. It's not that we're crazy or deaf. Well, that being said, there is indeed a gap.
We still have the esoteric topic, which we can talk about another day if you want. The cross.
Okay, well, yeah, sure.
The Chaos Cross. The Chaos Cross is the emblematic representation of Eurasianism, a movement that takes inspiration from the Satanism ideology developed by Alexander Kralik.
Man, well, upcoming show, following week, I believe already.
Let's employ sales techniques. Next week, this persists and individuals are like, no, maintain it going. I'm very positive about these things, but, well, before, and you can also say it out loud, because before saying goodbye this time, I have taken note. Well, I have my phone here because I never remember that phone number. I have not sure if I've told you, but on this tablet, it has a SIM card. It's right here on the tablet I have. These are the ones you pay very little per month. It's the way to be able to have a WhatsApp, and sometimes I receive voice notes. So for anyone who wants to get in touch with us, I'll tell you that WhatsApp is the 644-190-223, with the 3 plus 34 ahead is called from outside of Spain, plus 34-644-190-223. You can comment whatever you want about this program or any other. And if you leave a voice note, well, I can make better use of them, like some of them actually in another program, to clarify things or to ask interesting questions. And with this, I think that's enough for this week, the esoteric part. And well, give it a like. That way you help the program. This is the rewritten text to meet the desired word count. Feel free to comment anything in the comments on iVoox and YouTube.
That also causes it to rise, and that is all.
Well, nothing much. So until next time, goodbye, Jordy.